that we used, and then the micro steps, which is an entire, 10, 15, 20 minutes in and of itself. So make sure that you watch Mondays. It's on YouTube. You can go to Wealth Q&A. You can go to the YouTube. It's in the member area, all that fun stuff. But that's the full strategy, right? It's really important that we get the strategy right. And I'll talk about that shortly in the slides. But then we have to determine the micro steps, and there's 2 levels of micro steps. Okay. And I'll do some housekeeping once we turn the slides on. 2 levels of micro steps. There's the micro steps that we need to take to get the evidence that we should indeed take the next micro step. And there's the micro steps that we need our audience to take. So we need to take this step so that our audience can take this step. And if they don't, well, we don't want to overbuild. So we're looking for data. This is all a data gathering process. Dan has his 4 lenses. We go back to them all the time. So if you're in the Wealth Acceleration member area under the Wealth Acceleration bundle, go watch a video called 4 Lenses. Basically, there's 4 lenses that we run everything through. And if the new initiative, the thing we're thinking about doing, marketing, selling, whatever behavior, we're thinking about changing, we don't do it unless all 3 of the 4 lenses we check off yes. Sometimes we only have 2, and we can take a micro step that'll help us get to a 3rd, right? So it's those things, these really, really tiny, tiny steps that are going to make a huge, huge difference. Dan, anything you want to add before I pull the slides?
Yeah, I was itching to jump in. Mm-hmm. So drop a comment if you've applied the 4 lenses. I'm curious if anyone in here has actually executed that on evaluating a new initiative. And then just to maybe add to kind of the whole concept of micro steps. So the purpose, the reason why we care about this micro steps is the same reason why we care about the 4 lenses, which is we're trying to avoid spending a bunch of time on something that isn't properly validated, that there isn't data to actually support the actions that we're taking. So rather than naming the puppy on an idea and spending hours and hours and hours, we're trying to take what we call these micro steps to collect more data. Based off that data, it will inform the next step. It'll tell us what to do next. So we're calling them micro because they're intended to be small chunks, things that are micro that don't require a lot of time. And so, so again, we don't want to overbuild and find out that the idea isn't actually substantiated. We want to take these little steps that give us data and tell us what to do next.
Yep, I'll give you an example real quick. We've used this example. We've beat it to death, so I'm going to just skim over it. With like the financial literacy for kids. Yeah. Building a program is actually really hard, right? Like even just setting up the payment link, making sure the thank you page works, those integrations, it might take you an hour and a half. It might take you 10 hours if you're not tech savvy. Either way, that hour and a half is valuable or that 10 hours is valuable. So should we build, and when you build a checkout, just, you guys all know this, right? When you build a checkout, when you a payment link, you also have to have a thank you page, bare minimum, and probably a list you put them on. So do we want to make this list and then the thank you page and then integrate the checkout, which is a few hours of time? Well, is there any evidence that we should do this? Okay, and I have this, actually, I have a little image for you in the slides. So the question is there any evidence that people want this thing? So what we did was we said, hey, we're thinking about doing this thing, jump on this wait list. Hundreds of people got on the wait list. Okay, so people at least say they want this. Is there any evidence that people will pay what we need to charge them to do this right now? So the next one was, hey, look, it's going to be about this much. Are you interested? Right. And if a bunch of people say yes, we say, okay, here's a payment link, and so it's those micro steps that we use to validate actually taking the time to build the things that don't yet exist. Okay. If we already have things that exist, the micro steps might look a little bit different. So I'll break that down. But Dan nailed it. Assuming we're a small business, we have limited resources. We need to start. I rather take 45 seconds and then circle back tomorrow and look at the data to determine whether I should take 3 hours out of my schedule to build a thing. And then all the subsequent planning and building that comes after that. Oh, again, welcome, Profit Flywheel. We do Flywheel Fridays. And just to recap, we're always making one big assumption. If you're in our world, you know what it is by now. And that assumption is that you are in business to do something other than have a business. So every step needs to get closer to the things that actually matter to you. So we got to identify it, go through Dan's profit priority training again. I'll show you where you can get that later on. But every step needs to get us closer to things that actually matter to us. It is possible that we do a thing that will increase our revenue, but gets us further away from getting 10 hours a week back, which is one of the things Dan always uses. So as we're building out and we're teaching the profit flywheel, it's always under the assumption that you're trying to achieve something other than just have a business. Okay. And we're here every Friday. You go to profitflywheel.com. Get on the list. You'll get notified when we go live. This week, I said it was a busy week. On Monday, I did Coffee for Life case study. So every day, almost every day I go live. Sometimes I share it. Sometimes I invite other people. It's for my Customers for Life book buyers. And we broke down 100 plus sales in 24 hours using the Profit Flywheel framework, showed you how we ran. Somebody came and said, hey, here's what I have. What do I do? And on Monday, we just said, hey, this is how we ran through the frameworks, decided what to do, and made 111 sales in 24 hours. Tuesday was cash flow engineering. Every Tuesday, we provide live support for cash flow engineering masterclass members. Wednesday, wealth acceleration office hours. That's Dan's favorite. It's my favorite. It's just a mastermind. We just show up and say, hey, what do you guys want to talk about? Wide open. Format's different than this. This is a webinar format. Wednesday is a meeting format, meaning everybody just unmutes themselves and we just talk about wealth acceleration stuff. And then Thursday is our revenue multiplication support call. And have you ever seen Old School in that debate? You know, the debate section of Old School where like Will Ferrell just knocks it out of the park and they're like, what happened? He's like, I don't know. I just blacked out, man. That's what I feel like happened to Dan on Thursday. Like he shared his screen. Yeah. He shared his screen and then it's like he just blacked out and just dropped a full, incredibly concise masterclass on like just how to save as much money as possible on taxes. Really probably the underpinning of the whole thing, which is entity structure. Awesome breakdown. I strongly suggest you go watch it. There's probably $20,000 sitting right there for anybody that watches it and implements. So sharing that so you guys can go back and figure out where to spend your time this weekend. Strongly suggest you watch Monday and Thursday. Again, go watch yesterday's replay, which was Thursday if you're catching this on a day other than today. You can go to wealthqa.com and you can go to free tools. There's a little tab that says free tools. If you opt in there, I will send you yesterday's replay by the end of the day today. Okay. So go to wealthqa.com, free tools. And so the question we're always answering with these 4 things, you should know them by now: cash flow engineering, customers for life, revenue multiplication, get cash now. How do we be as profitable as possible? How do we drive our revenue up when our revenue is up and it's as profitable as it can be, or our readiness is high? Do we want to add another stream of income? Do we want to start adding to our portfolio? Do we want to maybe add a stream of income that is not super profitable, but there's some risk mitigation, right? Those are the things that we're always talking about to accelerate wealth. And then, of course, we call this the in case of emergency break glass, or it's on my whiteboard right now is, oh shit, get cash now. If for some reason we need to generate cash now, we're always developing ACE cards. So this is built into the whole entire, each one of these steps has ACE cards built in. which is basically in case of emergency, we're going to do this, which means we need to, be preparing for this, make sure that it is indeed an ACE card when the time comes. Drop a comment if that makes sense. Let me know in the chat. This is review for a lot of people here. But the question is always, should I do a thing, and what thing should I do? I need money. What thing should I do? I need to pay my bills. What thing should I do? I need more free time. What thing should I do? Or things are pretty good. I'm just kind of sitting around. Should I do a thing? That's actually a question that we run into more often than not, especially the Gary Halberts of the world and the Joe Polishes of the world are infamous for doing a thing when they shouldn't have, and actually increasing risk and stressing out their entire company. So there's a question we're always asking. To get closer to the things that matter to me, should I do a thing right now outside of what I'm doing? And if so, what thing should I do next? Again, the underpinning is things that actually matter to you. Monday, we broke down a strategy. Today, I'm just going to give you an overview of MICROSTEPS, and I'm hoping to leave time so we can talk a little bit about the tax strategy that's coming. So MICROSTEPS, Dan gave a great, broke it down great in the beginning. Does everybody know, or are we pretty clear on what we mean by MICROSTEPS? Drop a comment, let me know. So yeah, totally get MICROSTEPS. Hey, here's two things that help me visualize it. And if you have your own, drop them in the comments, drop them in the chat, let me know, because I would love to use them and help other people. And I encourage you to think about these two things. The first one is A to Z versus A through Z. This is primarily in marketing when I think about this, not so much big picture strategy. For whatever reason, this is the one that I think of. A lot of times when we talk to people, it's kind of almost like an elevator pitch. You have 30 seconds of the elevator with somebody. How do you make the sale? That is A through Z. That is, hi, stranger, buy something from me. Hi, stranger, let's get married. When in reality, there's a series of very natural steps people need to take. So most people in their strategy, in their sales, in their marketing, all this stuff, they're trying to go A through Z, which is a massive, massive, massive amount of ground to cover. And if you confuse them or make people feel incompetent or get overwhelmed, you're going to lose them, including yourself, if you confuse or overwhelm yourself. So what we want to start thinking of is A to Z, which means, okay, A to B. We got to go from A to B and just focus entirely on going from A to B. Because if we don't go from A to B, we may not get to C. And then B to C. And then C to D. Okay, let me know if that makes sense. A lot of times we're so focused on A to Z. Hey, I met this person. I got to sell them something. Or implementing a strategy or bringing a whole entire strategy together at once, which would be like, I think I might want to sell this thing. Let me write all the copy, build all the funnels, build all the checkout forms, film all the videos. That would be A to Z. A through Z would be, let me put a post out and see if anybody wants this first. Ooh, pretty big response. Cool. Now let me see if they're receptive to the price range. Oh, cool. They are. Maybe I could sell a masterclass and teach it live. Right. So if I can't sell something off of, I'll break this down later too. There's a certain rule I have where if I can't sell something off of a Google Doc and a checkout link, then I know it's going to take a lot more time than I probably have to figure out how to go A through Z. And I'll show you when that makes sense and when that doesn't make sense, because sometimes you do have to start, at the very, very, very beginning and work through it.
Nick, I think you just covered a lot of ground in what you just said, so maybe I can sprinkle in a couple of different things.
Yeah, please.
That's all right. So I think what's been glorified is sort of what I'll just call the flux capacitor moment, which if you've seen Back to the Future, you know what the flux capacitor is. Doc Brown hits his head on the toilet, and I think it's the toilet, and then he comes up with the idea of the flux capacitor in that moment, right? And so that notion has been glorified in many respects, that we are going to have these profound moments where we solve a problem, and the geniuses just have a moment. They wake up. Mozart wakes up and has the everything written, all the music written. All these great songs are just written in a flash. These profound technological improvements happen in an instance. And if you study the data, that's just not true. Go read a book like How to Fly a Horse that's from the inventor of the Internet of Things, who just completely demystifies this notion of the overnight genius. And the reality is it's through this consistent execution over a long duration of time that then you have that moment of clarity. And so the point of that is that I think that many entrepreneurs are wired with this idea that I just had this amazing idea, therefore it's going to be successful, and so I'm going to go build it because it's a profound genius moment, and therefore it's going to go sell, and I need to build it all. And the only thing that's getting in the way of this genius idea is having the right landing pages and having all of the copy be correct and so on and so forth. But the solution is exactly what people need. And again, that's just sort of a like flux capacitor, hit your head, got this idea, now we race to build it. And it may be, in fact, a genius idea and brilliant, but it doesn't mean people are going to buy it. And in fact, depending on where you are in the diffusion of innovation curve and all that sort of stuff, it may take years before people are going to have awareness of the problem and awareness that what you've developed is actually the solution. And so that's why we need to take these steps to validate and figure out what the messaging is that's going to lead people to it before we go build everything. So I wanted to add that distinguishment, and then or plus what you said. And then you mentioned the sort of, if I can't sell it through a Google Doc. And I just want to expand on that, because what you quite literally do is we'll write all of the sales copy in a Google Doc. And so no landing page, no technology. It's like Google Doc to a checkout page. And that can be stood up pretty quickly, because you can just open a Google Doc right now, write it all out, send people to it, and then they go to a checkout page, and you didn't spend the hours and hours building out all the forms and integration and zaps and so on and so forth. And so almost universally, when we have a new offer, we just write it in a Google Doc to a checkout page. Mm-hmm. And to your point, if your audience, people who already like you, who are your kind of people, they're your true fans, if they're not going to buy off a Google Doc to a checkout, then it's unlikely that if you build out all the forms, very, very unlikely that if you build out all the tech and forms, that people are going to buy off that. If your kind of people, your true fans, won't buy off a Google Doc to a checkout, then why could you assume that cold traffic suddenly, because you got the form set up the correct way, you're going to buy off of it? Yep. So it saves an immense amount of time. It's the difference between, because people will say, how do you guys get offers up so quickly? It's like, because we write it in a Google Doc and then a checkout page, and we just copy a checkout page from some other form that we've set up. And so all that can be done in 30 minutes to an hour, rather than 20 to 40 hours building out the full funnel.
I'll share some examples too. Once they have a slide in here with a little image. The other imagery here, and Dan will probably circle back, because I have a little, it's like 3 boxes, but I call it a graphic. Headlights. I also think of headlights, and the reason being, if we eliminate all speculation, which is, all right, so people are going to click on this ad and they're going to go through this funnel. They're actually going to show up and watch this webinar, and then they're going to fill out. Well, that's all speculation. We have assume for like your own sanity and expectation management that it is pitch black and you actually can't see anything. We have no idea. And so the imagery that I have is always pitch black, and you have a car and your headlights show just a couple feet in front of you. That is the only thing that we can see or have any control over. And so a lot of times, especially like tripwires, ascension ladders, you build out this beautiful ascension ladder and you go, okay, people are going to buy this and they're going to buy this and they're going to buy that. And we actually don't know if any of that's true. The headlight analogy is just like just what is right immediately in front of you that we can immediately do something and see what's happening. Because we don't know, we really just don't know what's beyond that. And every step we take, it's like moving the car forward a little bit. Our headlights illuminate a little bit more out in front of us so we can start making good decisions about, do we speed up? Do we slow down? Do we go a different direction? So A to Z, A through Z, and headlights. Those are the things. If you have your own, drop them in the comments. Let me know. Put them in the chat. It's really useful. So this is how I think about micro steps, and we'll get Dan's feedback too, because typically we have very similar frameworks, but nuance might be different. Most people are really top down, and sometimes you have to start that way. I am much more of a bottom up, which is backwards, is the way most people think. So if I already have a thing, right, we already have a thing in mind, we already have a thing built, especially if it's maybe testing a new angle or we can use an existing infrastructure, I'm going to invert. I'm going to start backwards. This is where I would go straight to a Google Doc and try to sell a thing, right? If I cannot sell straight off of a Google Doc to a checkout page to a thing that already exists, this would be all the micro steps. Like this over here would be like awareness and ads, right? I certainly don't want to start over here and hope people want it and then build the whole thing and then find out people don't want it. So if I'm calling this the main thing, because the truth is you might be optimizing for something else other than sales. I don't know what, but it could be attention, fame, whatever. So this is the main thing. And this is what I want people to do. I'm going to just go one thing over here. So people need to hit this checkout page. The micro step I'm going to take is if people see this checkout page, assuming it already exists, will they buy? I don't need to worry about like, what is my ad copy over here? I want to know right now, if people see this checkout page in my warm audience, will they buy? Right? If yes, cool. The next step is like, well, how do I get more people in my warm audience to see the checkout page? And we start working backwards, take these really tiny micro steps. If this doesn't exist, a good example would be the financial literacy for children, and we can't use an existing infrastructure. So the tax planning thing, which I'm going to talk about, is in the slides as well, we ran this way. And I'll show you. I will show you on these slides exactly how we're going to validate that. But we're using existing infrastructure. We already have a call set up every Tuesday. So nothing needs to be built here outside of changing some of the copy on some of the pages. So for this particular thing, I'm working backwards. The infrastructure exists, the pages exist, the member area already exists. There's not a whole lot of new building outside of showing up and talking and teaching, which again, infrastructure is already built. If that was not the case, so financial literacy for children, we couldn't use the existing infrastructure because we're not going to have kids pop on our calls with you guys, right? We started over here. This was, okay, if we put a message out, is anybody interested? Hey, look, a lot of people seem to be interested. Okay, let's put them on a list. Okay, people that are interested actually got on the list. Now let's tell them what the price is. Oh, little drop off there. All of a sudden, people don't want to vote with their money. So we never built this infrastructure because we took a series of micro steps that said this probably would have been a waste of time. And neither one of us really had the bandwidth to put all the time and effort into here that might give us more evidence that this was a good idea. Okay, so I just share this real quick. If the infrastructure exists, if the modules exist, if everything already exists, I'm going to start working backwards to get micro steps. I'm going to look right here. Can I get somebody to buy this thing? If it doesn't already exist, the checkout page won't even exist until I have a list of people that already know the price and have already said they want to buy it. And we get there through a series of, power offers and stuff like that. Make sense?
Before you transition.
Yeah.
So if we just kind of dissect a little bit more the financial literacy for kids idea. So we made a couple of posts that were short posts like, hey, if I did this thing, here's what I roughly think the thing would look like. But won't know the entire details until we get through it. Would anyone be interested? A bunch of people said yes. So we sent them to an opt-in page. That then got shared around. And so we had something like 1,000 plus folks who within 48 hours added their name to the list. And then, so within 48 hours, 1,000 people subscribed to this wait list, which is pretty good considering 2 Facebook posts.
Mm-hmm.
So then we sent them to a Google Doc that had the breakdown of the program and a link within the Google Doc to the checkout page. At this point, we spent maybe 2 hours total on this process, right? And then people didn't buy. And we abandoned the idea at that point. And so a lot of folks, though, would go like, well, you had 1,000 people sign up for this wait list. Why would you abandon it at that point, given the fact that you've had so many people sign up? This goes back to what we teach in the revenue multiplication, though, which is that this is all happening in the middle of COVID-19. And so within the readiness stuff that we have, where we look at cash volatility and revenue volatility, so reserve in our main businesses, we've got, so the readiness score goes, how are your reserves? How funded are your reserves? Okay, we're all right there. What does our cash flow volatility look like? What does our revenue volatility look like? In the early days of COVID-19, like the revenue volatility and cash flow volatility was immense. And so they flipped to no action needed to address cash and revenue volatility to action needed. Right? And because it's our main thing, and because there's an action needed, not yet in danger zone, meaning extreme action, but because of that, and it's our main thing and our main source of income, we can't do anything else new unless something else new is low-hanging fruit. Like had people bought in droves and we had certain criteria, then there's enough revenue to justify it. But back to revenue multiplication, and the whole idea of readiness is that it's telling us if we're allowed to do something new. And so we weren't allowed to do something new unless it was clearly validated with little friction. But it wasn't. It was apparent that we'd have to do a lot to get the results. So that's the reason why we stopped, even though we had a lot of folks opt in. Just wanted to clarify that.
Yep, absolutely. And I think it's important to recognize that, not to say, depending on how we define work, the evidence is there. We could have made it work, quote unquote work, but the cost would have been perhaps greater than the result, given the readiness of everything else. So that's another thing that we always have to fight against, is like, yeah, it can make money and it can work, but at what cost? And the friction would have been too great. So hopefully that makes sense.
Nick, do you hear the drilling that's going on? And hear that background noise?
No.
Okay. They're doing quote unquote exploratory drilling.
That seems really strange. They're just looking for stuff.
Yeah.
It's fine. Explore, exploit.
It's just, yeah, intermittently drilling and then some hammering and then some drilling and then some hammering.
No, you got a super mic. It only picks up your voice. So back to the micro steps, we have to remember what we're optimizing for. And then we have to have a little bit of focus on building each stage, which is really that this particular thing is a customer journey, a customer life thing from a fulfillment standpoint. But when we're talking about doing something new, we have to focus on each stage here, depending on where we're starting. Okay. Really, really easy to start thinking about, well, how am I going to write the copy? If we cannot get somebody to buy off of this Google Doc, you got a warm audience, they won't buy off Google Doc, and this thing's already sitting here. This stuff doesn't matter. It really doesn't. And so it's really important to focus. I just had a conversation with a client who's in the new diamond level. I just had a conversation with a client, and there's a lot of, well, I got to get all this done, but there's no evidence that anybody's going to buy it. So we're going to spend 20 hours building funnels, and we don't even know if anybody wants it. I'm sure, again, flux capacitor, great idea, but we want to take these micro steps to get evidence, and then we want to be hyper aware of the micro steps so that we can recreate them. If we know somebody saw this video and they went to this link and they saw this thing and that got them to buy, we want to make sure that as much as possible, we're getting our audience to take those micro steps, not going straight for the jugular, working through this backwards, building these nice little bridges, and then trying to go A to Z every single time, right? So we just want to be cognizant of those things. Boop, boop, boop. So, any questions about micro steps? I'm zooming through these slides. What I'm going to do here is, because I want to leave time for questions for anybody on the Zoom. Here's the challenge. Every flywheel I'm going to try to give you something to do is lay out what you're trying to accomplish. Okay. If that's sell a particular thing, if that is build a particular thing, if that is sell more of something, it may be retain your clients, whatever it is, and identify the most immediate limit. So if you have a thing, I work backwards. If there's not an existing thing, we could work backwards, but we still end up starting right here, right? We just go nothing there, nothing there, nothing there. We start here. So either way, I work backwards technically. And then we want to identify the most immediate limit. So if we're working backwards and we have a little bit of a kink in the hose right here, fixing this thing will not improve what is called the throughput, the total amount of stuff coming through, right? The end result. So if you line out, it could be boxes like this, do it on paper, Excel sheet, however you like to do it, and figure out, okay, I have this thing, I'm trying to sell it, and start working backwards. Or I don't have a thing, so I'm going to start working forward. Identify the most immediate kink. So if I can't get somebody to buy this off a Google Doc, then there is no sense in me removing any of the kinks anywhere else in the process. It just doesn't matter. That is wasted work. So what I challenge you to do is lay it out and identify the most immediate limit, the thing that is preventing you or somebody else taking a micro step. More than likely, you're just trying to make them take too big of a step. Right? So you're saying, hey, stranger, go through my funnel and buy my thing, where none of the steps of that funnel were validated. Okay, and then determine the micro steps that you need to take and the micro steps that your audience needs to take to give you the evidence that you can take the next step. If you help with this and you're in the platinum membership, you can use office hours for this. We can talk through this. I'm just trying to give everybody here something actionable to do. And you can share in the group and ask for help. It's a Wealth Acceleration group. If you're a member, it's the Profit and Productivity group. If you're not, lay out what this actually looks like. Because what I find all the time is that people are writing a post, sending them into a tripwire or a funnel of some sort, yada, 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 hoping they get here. And there's no evidence that getting here leads to a sale. Right? We want to really try to identify what is the next thing. We can get, this is super granular to be actionable. We could zoom way out and talk much more macro about strategy, steps for strategy. But what I
think the most common example, and it could be, and it's back to A to Z, which is email directly to an offer, add directly to purchase, and there's no validation that's occurred that when you send the email, people are going to buy, or when you do the ad, how warmed up are they to actually purchase whatever the thing is. And so you end up spending a lot of time or money building all this stuff out, and you're just trying to go right for the kill. I mean, if you look at our ad strategy, it's a series of micro steps. That might be the best way to illustrate this. What do you think?
Yeah, I'll give you an example of our ad strategy. This is actually one of the things that I do intuitively, which looks really, really appealing. But if somebody's like, "Oh, look, Nick can make a bunch of sales, make me a bunch of sales," um, they're not always prepared for like the number of micro steps that it takes to do so. And our ad strategy is like, you see this video and there's no offer. You probably see videos. If you're on this, you probably see videos of Dan out there floating around on your Facebook newsfeed. There's no offer. And only if you watch a certain percentage of this particular video do you see this video, where generally like these videos are, there's a very soft hint that there is an offer somewhere, but there's not, in this second tier, there's not a hard sell. And then here, there may be a video that teaches something and has a little bit of a pitch in it. And then here, only if you've watched this, which we only show these people that have watched these. So only if you've seen 25% of all of these, meaning we know what you've heard, we know what questions you're probably asking yourself. Do you see like just a static traditional conversion ad? Most people are just running this straight to strangers. Right. So our ad strategy is built in a series of micro steps where you only see this traditional ad after you've seen this 25% of this, again, which you only see if you've seen 25% of this, which you've only seen if you've seen 25% of this. So it's a series of micro steps before we even let you see traditional advertisement. And that's
over time it gets cheaper and cheaper, right? So for the people who are watching the tier 1 videos, that initial set of videos, like we're looking to get 100% views on a 3 to 5 minute video for less than $1. And over time, with the right targeting and stuff, it goes down. We've got some videos, for 20 cents, something like that. And if they were on TV, any other medium, to get someone to watch it, something for 3 to 5 minutes for 20 cents is cheap, right? But when they go to tier 2 and then to tier 3, the cost goes down significantly because they already watched our stuff over here in tier 1. And so the cost for people to watch 100% of the videos in tier 2 is 25% of the cost for them to watch tier 1. And then the same thing happens, and then eventually you start converting them, but you build up pretty massive loyal audience in that process. The problem is that it's the long game, right? Which is what we always default to playing, which is we're not going to make sales on the first day that we turn on ads or the second day. The reality is very few people are making sales when they just go direct to conversion ads of any sort anyways. Right?
Let me I'll break down. I'm glad you brought that up because I'm just the strategy. The ad strategy is a great example. Here's how we launched this whole thing, which is our Wealth Acceleration membership and all the products that come with it, from a Google Doc.
Yeah.
Right. And then said, okay, and systematically said, okay, well, it's validated. People want it. They like it. Now, we can't sell everybody off a Google Doc, but what is it that these people have seen that made them buy off a Google Doc? And then we build what these people have seen here. Right. And then it just goes on. So now what would a complete stranger, eventually we get to the point, what would a complete stranger need to see for this to make sense to them? So that this makes sense to them, because this is the thing that people heard that got them to buy off the Google Doc, which is now obviously a sales page. So it's a series of micro steps that got us to an ad strategy that works.
Yeah. I mean, that leads into how we got to the place where we decided we're going to build in tax planning into Wealth Q&A, which is, I was telling you, hey, the best source of leads right now for clients who want to do planning and that also end up using our higher level of support heard me on a specific podcast. And in that podcast, I talked about this set of things, which happened to be 90% tax. And so when they call in, they reference that podcast and they reference the specific strategies that I mentioned. And so how do we then replicate that? So I can't get the world to listen to that podcast. How do we replicate that in our ad strategy so that the pieces from that podcast that led them to call get built into the series of videos that we're rendering in our ad strategy?
Yep, which is a perfect segue. You didn't know this was coming. I'll tell you again. What we do is transparently we show you what we're doing because you're in the middle of it. If you're in our world, you're in the middle of it. So may as well just show you in real time. Wealth acceleration diamond level. That's the new level that we're thinking about doing, because what it does is it solves another long-term goal, which is right over here. It's not on this graph, which is it feeds Dan's firm in Seattle. We discussed that talking about these tax strategies are his best source of clients as of right now. And so we said, okay, wealth acceleration diamond level. What we have, so if we lay it out, this is what we want it to look like.
This is the strobe light thing too that you like to do. So again, shield your eyes if you have any seizures.
I gotta get disco music or rave music or something. So what we have right now is a platinum level, which is everything I showed you before. Bunch of live calls, bunch of access to us. I said, okay, let's build in this diamond level. How do we validate this diamond level? That's the next micro step, because if this diamond level is validated, where we teach, Dan teaches all the tax strategies and all these custom tax plans, it's really, really simple in theory to take the next micro step, which is have his firm just do it all for you. Right. So this is the thing that we need to validate. It's the diamond level wealth acceleration, which will be cash flow engineering, masterclass, and live support. Infrastructure for that already exists. Revenue multiplication, masterclass, and live support. Infrastructure already exists. The new things would be the full tax mastery strategy, custom tax planning, plus live support, which is Dan breaking down all the strategies, giving you the workbooks, helping you workshop through what you should do, what you shouldn't do, why, entity structure, all that really cool stuff is on the replay that you can watch from yesterday. And what I'm going to throw in is a monthly marketing and sales masterclass, because I just need a place to brain dump the marketing and sales stuff that we've been testing and stuff like that. And tinkering around lounge events, because I'm probably moving to Seattle, which means Dan and I will be in the same place. So it's pretty easy to just invite people coming out. So the infrastructure, by and large, is already there. And it's a few things that we would do anyway. Right? And super scientific pricing here. Looking at $259.97 a month or $3,119 per year. Right? So this is what we're trying to validate. It's not what I'm trying to sell you right now. This is how the math works out. And where do these numbers come from? Dan Kennedy has split tested more numbers than anybody on the face of the earth, and this is what he landed on as the highest conversion. I'm not going to reinvent I'm not going to do all that split testing. So we're looking at a diamond level, which includes basically everything we do, live access, events, all that stuff. And it needs to be validated, because if we can validate that, the next thing will be the done for you, which is all the tax strategies, blah, 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 blah. Dan's team, his team of tax experts, just does it all for you to make sure it gets implemented. Okay, so you can see hopefully you can see how we're taking these micro steps to get to the long-term goal. What we don't want to do is build these new things, set up an event, do a monthly marketing call, get the nth degree, which is a brick and mortar firm in Seattle, figure out how to integrate all those payments, and then find out nobody wants it or we can't sell it. That would create a lot of headache for everybody. So how can we use these diamond? This was the question I was asking myself. Okay, we got the existing infrastructure plus benefits. How can we validate that people want this, generate some revenue to pay for the things that we're going to have to include? So the first question was, can we use the diamond benefits to get more business owners into platinum? Got all these people that have already seen the platinum offer and for some reason haven't pulled the trigger. So if I show them the diamond benefits, right, this is a very, very micro step, but if I show them the diamond benefits and that pushes them over the edge, that's evidence to me that there's a value proposition in these benefits that was not there before. Right? Does that make sense? Dan, does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And I was trying to pull up the thing from the book, Predictably Irrational, from Dan Ariely. I think that's how you pronounce
Great book.
his name.
Great
Yeah,
book.
great book. And how buying decisions change when you introduce additional options.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, they give the example of newspaper sales offering web only versus web and print, and how you can essentially offer a decoy to
push them one way or the
introducing
other.
a third option to drive people to what you intend. So the vehicles, they do that as well, right? So you got the super high end. They don't really want to sell you that because it's not actually the most profitable thing. The middle option is usually the most profitable thing. And so they know by having a lower tier, a middle, and an upper tier that most people are going to buy the middle.
Yep. They do it with homes as well. He uses houses as an example.
So similar concept when you just have the platinum with as the only option, you're likely to attract the innovators, the 5% or so of the market that's going to buy. But as you try to expand your market share, you have to offer additional options to capture more of the market share, basically.
Yep. Speaking of early adopters, so the question is, can we use diamond benefits to get more business owners in platinum? And there's two layers of that. I wasn't going to talk about the second one because I felt like it was too advanced, but Dan gave us the context. It's perfect. The first is if we say, hey, look, if you're in platinum by this date, you'll get these benefits. If people buy, it tells me those benefits were valuable. The other thing it does is it gives us another option. It gives us a middle option. And the assumption is, off of tons of research, I love Predictably Irrational. It's one of my favorite books. Just by having platinum as a middle option, I'm willing to bet conversion improves as people come through.
Yeah.
And so, speaking of early adopters, like I said, this is the offer that we're going to put out. And you guys are the first to see it, but if you're on the email list, you'll see it. From today until Sunday, so it's Friday till Sunday, anyone that is enrolled in a platinum membership before Monday morning, it's supposed to be Sunday night, but it's like 9 a.m. Monday morning before I'll actually get in and change stuff. Full disclosure. Anyone enrolled in a platinum membership before Monday automatically gets grandfathered in to the new diamond structure, which means you get all the tax planning stuff, you get all of the Q&A and yada, yada, yada. So what I'm looking for is, with this campaign, does it get people that have already seen the platinum offer to enroll? If yes, there's a value proposition in those benefits, which tells us it is totally worth, and plus there's extra money coming in. It's totally worth adding that little tiny bit of extra infrastructure. And, Dan has to do some work in digging out the workbooks for all these strategies and stuff. But this MICROSTEP validated that there's a value proposition there that was not there before. And we are articulating it effectively if people are going, I didn't want this before, but I want it now. So anybody in platinum before Monday morning will get automatically grandfathered into diamond. Why? Because I'm pretty sure we're going to do diamond. We want to validate it first. And personally, neither one of us wants to spend the whole entire weekend building out all this new infrastructure until it's validated. Right? So if we get these little MICROSTEP benefit to anybody that gets in, you get the free upgrade. A benefit to us is we get the certainty that it is an appropriate next step to take. Drop in the comments if that makes sense.
Yeah, great example of the MICROSTEP.
There are two levels, right?
An example of what we usually try to do is, or universally we do, is that for people who are early adopters, we try to reward them. So people who are already platinum members who made the commitment before, we're rewarding them by expanding our program at no additional cost. And folks will go, well, aren't you leaving money on the table? And that assumes that what we're trying to do is just capture all the money right now from our existing customers. But we're not leaving money on the table because what we're trying to do is hedge the risk that we're going to spend a bunch of time building out all this stuff that people don't want.
Yep.
So that's more costly, the time that we would incur building out this additional program and landers and emails and blah, blah, blah. When it's more beneficial just to reward the people that are already our customers and validate an offer.
Yep. So the two levels of Diamond here, or I'm sorry, the two levels of MICROSTEPS is you could see the micro step that the audience needs to take, which would be, if you're not in Platinum, enroll in Platinum. And the micro step that we need to take is to get our audience to take that step to provide the evidence. So there's always two layers of, they're kind of the same, but I think it's important to realize it's the funnel conundrum. I call it the funnel conundrum. We go, okay, we want our people to go through this funnel, and we stop there. And we never ask, because of the physical construct of a funnel has gravity helping it out. Like when you pour water in the top of a funnel, it actually goes through it because gravity pulls it down. In real life, we're not actually dropping people into a physical funnel. There is no gravity pulling them through it. So I think of the funnel inverted, upside down. What do I have to do to get that person to take the effort to climb up the funnel wall? So a lot of times we assume, like we build all these pages, that people are just going to click through them. What are we going to do to get them to take that micro step? We can't just assume they're going to get pulled through, right? So that's my personal issue with the funnel concept, is that the physical construct has an advantage that our mental construct does not, which is gravity. Right. So all of these things now, this is our existing infrastructure in Platinum, adding the full tax mastery, which is going to pay for all of this many times over after watching Dan yesterday, add a monthly marketing and sales masterclass where I just break down what's working, Q&A. Diamond Lounge events will probably be like, hey, we kind of want to hang out. Who wants to come? If you're in a Diamond membership, we did a version of this a couple months ago. We just hung out. It's like 10 of us, 12 of us in Dan's office, hung out on a yacht for a day, had some dinner. Like, it was a very productive couple days. And again, if you're not Platinum, you go to cfeclass.com/offer, pick Platinum, $1,200, $1,200 from Platinum. And you can, if you're there by Monday morning, whenever I turn the computer on and start pushing buttons and clicking stuff, you'll get grandfathered right into the Diamond offer. It is Monday will be June 1st. So if you're watching this after June 1st, you can still go there, get Platinum, and then you might have to get upgraded to Diamond. But that's the micro steps. And I really like showing people something that we do called Inception, exactly the micro steps as we're building them, because you're in the middle of it, you're part of it. It's the most useful teaching or coaching, in my opinion, is taking people through a process and then continuing to show them, like kind of like a GPS, like, you are here, now you're here, now you're here. This is how we got you to move here. So cfeclass.com/offer, pick Platinum. If you're there by Monday, you get grandfathered into Diamond. There is another level beyond Diamond, which is not built yet. We've talked about it. It'll be Diamond plus done for you tax, everything Dan's team does. You do not get grandfathered into that. Just letting you know, there's a pretty hard cost on having Dan's team babysit all the stuff and enter all the information and all that. So clarify that real quick.
I appreciate that. As much as I like to help people, it definitely costs more than $1,200.
Yeah.
Mostly because my team likes to get paid. If we could eliminate that issue.
full again, full transparency, we're probably looking somewhere between 7,500 and 10 grand for the year, which is like a full mastermind plus done for you tax stuff. So that's something you can reach out to either me or Dan privately about, because we're not going to build all the stuff for it until it's validated.
Yep, exactly.
Cool. Only question I got here is, do you have 10 minutes after Zoom for a quick call related to the diamond offer? Perhaps. Let me
Gotcha. What other questions do people have? We're trying to be, as always on Fridays, transparent in like the behind the scenes of how we figured this stuff out and why we're doing it and how we're going to validate our offer and all that stuff. So anything you want to know about our approach and the why, etc., drop it in. I can go over a little bit.
Yep. Exciting stuff. Stuff is capitalized, so it's like exciting stuff.
I'll take it.
Jason, thank you. What's the biggest takeaway? Jeff said he has questions on entities. Dan, you can take it if you want. I kind of want to encourage, unless if it's in depth, to push to Tuesday, because that's the theme of Tuesday.
Do you mean entities in terms of how to structure it to optimize from a tax perspective, as well as like how to move cash throughout the businesses? Is that what you mean? Or more so trying to validate like what it is that you're going to build?
He said he'll bring it on Tuesday.
Okay.
We're going to hit that. So we'll hit that Tuesday. Anybody wants to join, platinum members have access to Tuesday. So same, cfeclass.com/offer. And we'll do is we'll hop off. If you have any questions, drop it in the comment. If you're catching a replay anywhere. And Jeff, I just shot you my phone number. I have about 12 minutes if you want to hop on a quick call right before we jump off. So that's it. We'll see you guys hopefully.
Ben's got one question that says, was the done for you offer always the end goal with the micro steps, or is there something which has developed as you've seen there may be demand?
That's a good question. My perspective is that wealth Q&A and nth degree, which would be doing the done for you, were being built separately, knowing there would be some spillover. From my perspective anyway, the obvious synergy and straight line just kind of came into the vision probably a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, the end goal has been to finish the Certainty app, which we're launching next week. I finally got it up on from the developer to the main site, and starting to get users logged in and all that. So we've been trying to build the Certainty app and a few other things that all are connected to the CPA firm and the book and the stuff that we teach in Wealth Q&A. So that's sort of the missing piece. And in order to build the Certainty app and fund that and allow me to have more time to focus on it, that requires removing me from the amount of time that I spend on the done for you tax planning. And so then how do we do that? How do we set up that offer so that my team is better positioned to execute on it? And then from there, we figured out kind of what the version of done for you tax planning should look like for it to be more scalable with not the same level of my involvement. So once we figure that out, how do we go about actually creating that while checking at least 3 of the 4 lenses? And then that led to, well, can we use the existing stuff in place you got Tuesdays, etc. So how do we validate all of that? So that was sort of the process. So there are a couple of other things further down from the done for you.
There's a there's something that I really like about the microstep methodology, for lack of a better term, right now, and that is if if you try to go A to Z, you miss a lot of really valuable information in the middle, right? So gathering these micro steps, we've made little micro pivots for the last year and a half based on the evidence that was gathered by this. Like sometimes stuff happens we never would have guessed. We're not going to ignore it and plow on anyway, right? We say, whoa, some of it's like, ooh, didn't expect that. That sucks. Some of it's like, wow, who knew there was this opportunity sitting here and it ties perfectly into this thing. And so by going through a series of micro steps, you're much less likely to miss things that in hindsight you're like, ooh, we should have known that. If you get too myopic with that, trying to go A to Z, I'm going to build this funnel. You might completely miss the fact that there's like a better lead source sitting right there trying to give you clients, and you're so focused on the thing getting built from A to Z, you completely miss all the evidence that there's an easier way, or that there's synergy between two or three things.
Yeah, I think it was in the Before You Pivot class that we did with the 7 steps or 7 things you should consider before you pivot, where we talked about being leery of copying what other people are doing. So if you just outright copied what we're doing, like our website and all of that, it would be problematic because you'd have to make a lot of assumptions about what we're optimizing towards. And it's not readily apparent. Like you might think, oh, they're just optimizing towards growing wealth Q&A. But we're growing wealth Q&A to do other things.
Mm-hmm.
And so what appears to be the truth is not necessarily what's actually going on behind the scenes.
Yep. We talk a lot about that. Cool. Any other questions? Or we'll wrap up and I'll hop on, Jeff will hop on a call real quick, answer questions about any diamond stuff. And then we will see you guys Monday. If you're here Monday, you can always hit profitflywheel.com to get notified for anything that we decide to go live for.
Yeah, before we drop off, so Mondays are usually when we talk about PPP, if there's any updates. I shared on my personal page today, and maybe we'll email it out, but the whole forgiveness calculation is essentially set up in a way that's the math makes it impossible for you to get 100% forgiveness based off the way that it's calculated. And I can share out how I got there, but basically it's unless you hire more FTE than you had last year, so you hire more staff, you can't get to the 75% threshold, just again based off math. So it appears that Congress is going to correct that. Appears.
It would be silly to have.
Otherwise, there will be 0% or close to 0% of businesses that will get 100% forgiveness because of the math. So all that to say, there have been a lot of murmurs. There was a bill passed by the House yesterday trying to correct some things within PPP. But we're still in a little bit of a holding pattern, hoping that the technical issues with the bill will be corrected. Just speculation that the SBA has not provided. They provided various rounds of guidance on forgiveness, but they haven't really answered the stuff that's more in the weeds. They've just kind of clarified what was already widely known, in my opinion. And so speculation is that they're expecting Congress to fix some of the systemic issues within the way the bill was constructed. And that once that happens, then we'll actually get some guidance. So it looks like they're going to expand the 8-week period to anywhere from 12 to 24 weeks, depending on which bill ultimately gets passed. So if that happens over the weekend, then Monday we'll talk about it. Otherwise, as soon as those updates come, we'll have a emergency session and cover what we know.
Cool. All right. Profit Flywheel Friday. Hopefully you guys join us next week. If you're in the Platinum membership, then hopefully you just join us every day and participate and implement and all that stuff. And we will see you all next week.
Cool. See ya.